Federal Sharon Cabbage Rose cheese dish. Most people open a cabinet, see a small pink-covered dish with soft rose motifs scattered across the surface, and decide in half a second that it belongs with the rest of the everyday glass they never use. That single moment of dismissal has quietly cost families real money over and over again. The Sharon pattern, also called Cabbage Rose, was made by Federal Glass in the early 1930s, and the covered cheese dish remains one of the stronger forms in the line. A clean example with its original lid still moves in a range of $200 to $400 when the color is even and the glass hasn't clouded. The real ones have a particular weight and a softness in the pink that later copies never quite capture. Turn the piece over carefully and look at the quality of the mold work around the roses. Authentic Depression-era examples show a depth in the relief that later reproductions flatten out. These dishes were never intended to be expensive when they left the factory, which is precisely why so many of them still sit unrecognized in the homes of people who once used them for Sunday cheese and crackers and then simply forgot they existed. Real quick, I'm chasing 1,000 subscribers before this month ends, and every single subscribe actually moves the needle for a channel this size. So if you're enjoying this, I'd really appreciate it. Hawking Cameo Ballerina Cookie Jar. There's a quiet theatrical quality to these green or pink jars that somehow makes people treat them like sentimental kitchen keepsakes rather than objects with an actual market. Hawking produced the cameo pattern, often called ballerina or dancing girl, for only a few years in the early 1930s, and a surprising number found their way into American kitchens as everyday storage. The stronger vintage examples regularly trade between $90 and $200, sometimes more when the dancing figure remains sharp and the lid is still present. The glass is pressed with a repeating silhouette of a dancer under a garland, and the better pieces show a clarity in the green that feels almost like jade under natural light. Most owners never bother to examine the base or the sharpness of the figure. When they finally do, they discover the mold details that separate the genuine article from the later imitations that began appearing once the pattern became recognizable. These jars were never cheap in the sense of throwaway glass, yet they still get treated as if they were disposable, and that gap between original intention and current perception is exactly where the quiet money continues to live. Small ask in the middle of all this. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by month's end, and if you've learned even one thing so far, subscribing takes 2 seconds and means a lot. Jeanette Adam Butter Dish. If you already love the soft pink tones that remind you of rose quartz, these squarish butter dishes feel like they were made for exactly the kind of eye you have. Jeanette Glass produced the Adam pattern for a short stretch between 1932 and 1934, covering the surface with a paisley-style swirl in the center and small floral clusters along the edges. Solid pink examples with the original dome lid still sell in a range of $150 to $350 when the glass remains clear and the lid sits properly. People buy them because the shape is distinctive and a little formal, then eventually stick them in a drawer and forget the price they once paid. Years later, the same dishes surface at estate sales with $5 stickers on them. The pattern is easy to identify once you know the square profile and the central swirl. Once you recognize it, you stop seeing a simple butter dish and start seeing a small piece of the same world that produced careful pressed glass during those difficult years. For anyone who already collects colored stones and vintage objects, these dishes make more practical and emotional sense than almost anything else on this list. One quick thing before we keep going. I set myself a goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. We're getting close. And if this channel is worth your time, I'd love for you to be part of that. Jeanette Cherry Blossom Child's Butter Dish. Nothing gets dismissed faster than a tiny pink or green covered dish that looked like it belonged in a dollhouse. People see the small scale and decide the value disappeared along with the childhood it once served. In reality, the original child's butter dish from the cherry blossom line remains one of the scarcer forms, and authentic examples still sell between $400 and $800 when the color is strong and the lid is intact. The test is simple and takes almost no time. Look closely at the cherry motifs and count the raised bumps on each blossom. Originals usually show 2, while many later reproductions carry 3. A solid piece has a certain density in the hand that the thinner copies never quite match. These little dishes were originally made as part of a limited children's set and were produced in small enough numbers that many of them still survive in ordinary homes tucked inside larger collections of the adult pattern. The ones that end up sold for almost nothing are almost always the ones whose owners never took the 30 seconds required to examine the mold details. And that quiet pattern of loss repeats itself every single year. Macbeth Evans' American Sweetheart Ruby Red Pieces. A surprising number of American families own at least one piece of the soft pink American Sweetheart pattern, usually plates or cups that came down through the family. The tourist versions and the common pink forms are worth relatively little. The real rarities, the ones that appear in true ruby red, are a completely different story. These red pieces were made only in limited forms and never as full dinner sets, and good examples of cups, saucers, or small serving pieces still sell from $75 into the low 100s, depending on condition. Most people never learn the difference. They see a colored piece with a scroll border and assume it's decorative junk from the same era as the pink. The weight, the depth of the red color, and the almost liquid quality of the glass are what separate the genuine rare color from the everyday pink. Once you've held both kinds in your hands under good light, you stop confusing them forever. Hawking Mayfair Open Rose Pink Cookie Jar. Mayfair is one of those names that still carries a certain weight, even among people who don't actively collect depression glass. Hawking produced the open rose pattern through most of the 1930s, and the pink cookie jar remains one of the stronger forms that still turns up in ordinary homes. A modest example with its lid might sit comfortably in the $70 to $150 range, while finer or cleaner pieces climb higher without difficulty. The open roses repeated around the body are the first thing most people notice, but condition and the quality of the pink color matter just as much as the pattern itself. These jars turn up more frequently than some of the rarer cobalt pieces, which is part of the reason the better ones still command attention when they appear in good shape. People who inherit them usually have no idea that the cookie jar form carries more weight than the plates and cups, so the jars end up in the same drawer as everything else and wait there for years. That is the same pattern this entire list keeps revealing. The value is rarely hidden by complexity. It's hidden by ordinary familiarity. Macbeth Evans' American Sweetheart Pink Pitcher. American Sweetheart glass from the early 1930s has a delicacy and a thinness that modern pressed glass rarely manages to match. The better pitchers are soft pink with a scrolled border and a ribbed rim, and solid examples have sold in the range of $400 to $900 when the glass remains free of cracks and the color is even. Most people see pink glass with a pretty border and assume the piece is pretty but common. The difference shows up immediately in the weight, the clarity of the glass itself, and the precision of the mold work around the rim. Genuine larger pitchers feel substantial yet almost fragile in the hand. The pink sits deep in the surface rather than floating on top of it. These pitchers were luxury objects relative to the everyday plates in the same pattern, and enough of them reached American homes through gifts and purchases that they still appear in estates with some regularity. The ones that get undervalued are almost always the ones whose owners never looked carefully for the thinness and the specific scroll details under ordinary daylight. Hocking Mayfair Open Rose Blue Cookie Jar. The Mayfair name is so familiar in pink that most people stop actually seeing the blue versions after a while. A small number of blue cookie jars were produced, and those that survive with their lids can still hold real money, especially when the cobalt is deep and the mold work remains sharp. Better examples clear $200 to $350 without much struggle when the condition is decent and the color is true. The problem is that most owners keep the more common pink pieces and treat the blue ones as if they were simply another color variation that happened to come along. That's backwards in almost every practical sense. The pink is plentiful, the blue is the asset. Turn it over. Look carefully at the intensity of the color under daylight and pay attention to the weight and the quality of the open rose relief. These jars were never made in large numbers in blue, yet they still get treated as if they were essentially the same as the pink ones the original kitchen uses ended. That quiet gap between reputation and actual attention is exactly where the opportunity continues to live for anyone willing to look twice and take the color seriously. Hazel Atlas Royal Lace Cobalt Blue Pitcher and Tumbler Sets. English collectors and American specialists alike have known for years that the Cobalt Royal Lace line carries a different weight from the pink and green versions of the same pattern. The better pitchers and matched sets of tumblers still sell in the mid to high hundreds when the condition is honest and the blue remains deep and even. They look old in a way that makes people assume they're purely decorative and therefore not worth much beyond their surface color. The lace pattern is applied in intricate pressed detail around the body, and the stronger pieces show a depth and a precision that later copies never quite achieve, no matter how carefully they're made. Many of these pieces arrived in American homes as part of larger sets and then settled into cabinets for decades without anyone examining them with real attention. The ones that still have their original clarity and their blue free of cloudiness are the ones collectors still want when they appear. Most owners never learn the difference between a genuine period cobalt piece and a later tourist version made to look roughly similar from a distance. That particular form of ignorance has proven expensive for a long time, and it continues to create the same kind of quiet regret that runs through every category on this list. Hazel Atlas Royal Lace Cobalt Blue Cookie Jar. These are the jars that turn up less often than almost anything else on this entire list, and that scarcity is part of what makes them so easy to overlook when they do appear. Mid-century American households collected royal lace in pink and green in large numbers, but the cobalt blue cookie jar was produced in far smaller quantities, and it still appears in estates with surprising impact when it does surface. A well-made example with fine lace detail, even color, and an intact lid can sell for $225 to $350 or more without difficulty when the quality is genuine. Most people see the bright cobalt and the intricate border and decide the piece is purely decorative and therefore not worth serious attention. The quality difference between a carefully made original and a later mass-produced version becomes obvious once you've handled both under good light. On a good piece, the lace sits clean and deep. The blue fills the glass without thin spots or cloudiness. The base feels solid rather than light. These jars were never common, which is exactly why so many of the ones that do survive still hide in plain sight inside ordinary homes. Before deciding what your old colored glass is worth, take 5 minutes to inspect it carefully. Feel its weight, study the pattern, check the color in daylight, and examine the lid's fit. That small effort could reveal a hidden treasure instead of a lifelong regret.